That's right. Today we're going to make clam chowder. Okay, the first step, since you can see these clams have a bit of dirt on them because they were freshly dug, is I'm going to rinse them off through a strainer. I'm going to rinse them in this pot here because this is what I'm going to eventually cook them in, but you can rinse them in any old colander. Just get some of that dirt off, let it run out. So we're going to steam our clams, and why steam it over water when you can steam it over clam broth? Now, I'm not going to give any brands, but I will suggest a brand that uses very low sodium. Usually this one is 30 milligrams. You know, why add all that extra salt when you're going to get some nice brininess out of the clams, and then you're going to want to season your chowder the way you want it later. Okay, so here are the cherry stones in the strainer pot over the clam broth in the lower pot there for steaming. You don't have to use this type of pot. You can actually put the clams right into the liquid if you want to steam them that way, but I like to steam them this way. So while I was doing this video, my daughter asked me what a cherrystone is, and this is a cherrystone. Cherrystone is the size of a clam or a quahog here in Rhode Island. So you've got little necks, top necks, cherrystones, and quahogs are the big guys. And so those are the sizes of the clams. Okay, so the broth has come to a boil, and as you can see, the clams are slowly, though I can see my camera's getting fogged up, steaming away there. Okay, so as you can see, just about all the clams have opened up. Try and get a little higher view here so you can see them without the steam. And we'll just maybe give it another 30 seconds and then take it off the heat. So the clams are done cooking. Take it out, and you've got all this beautiful clam broth behind. A lot of juices from the clams in there. Obviously, you're going to want to strain that because there's going to be some sediment in there. There's going to be some dirt in the clam broth. But we're going to shuck these out of here now and chop them up. All right, so you can see here some of the sediment behind in the pot that I strained, but very little. It was quite clean. And then over here, you'll see I've got about 6 cups of clam broth for our clam chowder, which is pretty remarkable because I started with 23 ounce of the clam broth liquid down there. So that's, what's that? That's about a cup and a half. So the clams themselves gave up almost 3.5 cups of liquid. Okay, so I want to take the meat out of all of these shells. And then clean hands, of course. Oh, this one fell out already. Here it is. And then we'll chop it up, and we'll have chopped clams for our clam chowder. All right, with the clams cooked and chopped up, let's get to making the chowder. Here are our ingredients. First up, in the pot, salt pork is very traditional for clam chowder. I'm using some Blackbird Farm bacon ends, but you can do whatever you like. We've got celery, leeks, and onions in here. Can't really see the leeks, but they're under the onions there. I like leeks in my chowder. If you don't use them. Bay leaves, thyme, pepper, butter and flour to make your roux. Those clams that I chopped up, took out of the shells and chopped up. Cream. If you want a little lighter, you could use milk, but I like cream. And then all that leftover clam stock. And then over here, cooking separately to be added later, are the potatoes. So now we'll start with rendering down this Blackbird Farm bacon ends.
That's the slice of Junior is the best stuff you can eat. Now don't talk about my baby. She said so much she's sweet. Close to born. Yes, we are alone.
Okay, so the bacon has rendered, nicely browned, let out a lot of its fat. I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but the potatoes are being cooked over here. When that comes up to a boil, we'll cook them for about 10 minutes to get them nice and tender. And now the next thing that goes in is the onions, leeks, and celery. Okay, once the aromatics there have cooked down a little bit, we're going to add the butter, let that melt in there, some thyme, however much you like, and black pepper. And then once the butter melts, I'm going to make a roux by adding the flour. All right, so we've added the flour. We're making our roux. And it looks beautiful. Not gonna cook it long, just maybe 3-4 minutes. Did I mention adding the bay leaf? I don't believe I mentioned adding that, but now's the time to add that too. Okay, so as you can see, I'm switching to the whisk because I'm going to whisk in that clam juice. Now, I mentioned when I strained this juice, I'm gonna just strain it again, just in case there's any sediment, though it looks great. And I mentioned, as I was saying, that there were 6 cups of that clam juice. I may not use all of it here because that's a good amount for this chowder. Probably gonna use about 4 cups of it. There we go. Now I'll whisk that up with our roux. So the potatoes have finished cooking, and I'm straining them here, and then I'll add them to the chowder when it's done. But they are cooked and ready to be eaten. And then over here, as you can see, is the chowder. I have turned the heat up to high because a roux will not thicken unless it comes to a full boil. So I've added the clam broth, and we'll now wait for this to come to a boil for the full thickening. My wife just walked by and she glanced at it and went, "That looks clear. You're making Rhode Island chowder?" And I was like, "No, we haven't added the cream yet." But some people like Rhode Island chowder, so you could stop here, though I don't think I'd use a roux in a Rhode Island chowder. If you didn't use the roux and you just went with the clear broth, you could have a Rhode Island style chowder here. You'll note I didn't say anything about adding tomatoes for another style of chowder because no. Okay, once we've come up to a boil and we've whisked in that roux really well, we're going to cut the heat to low and simmer this for about 10-15 minutes to get it nice and beautifully cooked. Meanwhile, you can bake a loaf of bread to have with your chowder, but that's another show. Okay, final step. The cream. Whisk that in. And then once that's whisked and cooked for a few minutes, add the clams and the potatoes, and we're done. Don't forget to take that bay leaf out. And there you have it, the final dish. New England clam chowder with the side of bread and a little white wine. Thank you again for watching.